Hello, welcome to this Think and Link series. I am Srinivasan. Today, what we are going to do is we are going to look at selected market metrics to see how Indian markets have performed. Not only Indian markets, we are also going to talk about commodities such as gold, crude, then we have cryptos. We are going to take a look at how this market has also performed. So this is going to be key market metrics. That is what we are going to discuss about. So the important thing to note is that the current ecosystem has not changed. Globally, the uh, geopolitical tension persists. The Trump tariff tantrums continues. The Russia-Ukraine war. There are some headway being made, but we are not sure where it is going to land. The Pak and Indian conflict also continues to be in a state of flux. Their relationship seems to be in a state of flux. So we do not know what will happen when, but be that as it may, last week, how it was is what we are going to discuss. So in the first place, let's talk about the Indian market. Now, this is going to have a special focus with the Indian market. So two important metrics in the Indian market, namely BSE Sensex and Nifty 50, both have risen substantially. The gain has been substantial. This does not really indicate that PAC and India were in conflict, or at least we believe that that has been totally discounted because the market seems to be gung-ho. So Nifty closed at 25.019.80, logging in a gain of 4.21. BSE Sensex logging a gain of 3.62. And VIX, what is VIX? VIX is the India Volatility Index. Now, this serves as a reliable index of market risk, and it serves as a barometer of how the markets will be in the next 30 days, or what is the expected volatility of the market in next 30 days. Usually the VIX ranges between 13 to 17, which is supposed to be average. Anything above that would mean that the volatility has increased. So today, if you will find that it is 16.55, a good enough number. Now, going further, we have what is called as the forex reserves. India's forex reserves increased by 3.5 billion approximately. That is 0.66%. Now, when we talk about forex reserves, foreign exchange reserves, this gain or this particular increase could be due to two reasons. Either Reserve Bank of India purchases dollar in the market, in which case the exchange reserves would increase, or there could be a revaluation. If there is a revaluation, definitely, and if there is an increase, that will also be reflected in foreign exchange of a particular country. Going further, we have the S&P 500, an index which is largely representative of the US market. That has zoomed up by 5.27%, which actually belies uh, the general marketing uh, news that Trump is uh, not taking proper measures for reviving the economy. At least the stock market does not seem to indicate, or at least S&P 500 does not seem to indicate about Trump's tantrums at all. Going further, we are talking about DXY. DXY is the US dollar index, which tracks the strength of the US dollar. And this tracking of strength is because dollar is linked with the six major currencies, and they are euro, which has got the maximum weight, in this particular index, followed by Japanese yen. Then you have pound sterling, and then you have the and then you have Canadian dollar, you have Swedish krona, and then of course we have last but not the least the Swiss franc. So you'll find that DXY has gained by 56%, which means dollar index has strengthened vis-a-vis all the six currencies that I mentioned. When we talk about FPI, that is the foreign portfolio investors, they have actually withdrawn a net amount of $70.19 million from the Indian economy. When I'm talking about FPI, I'm talking about all three markets, namely equities, debt, as well as mutual funds. So you will find that FPIs have actually withdrawn $70.19 million. The DII, the DII stands for Domestic Institutional Investors, as represented by pension funds, insurance funds, mutual funds. Their investment in the equities market has been 9,557 crores. Now, this is definitely less than what it was during the previous week. Coming to the rate of exchange of US dollar versus Indian rupee, one US dollar closed at 85.55 on Friday. Uh, it was about 85.41 during the previous Friday. So rupee has lost by 14 paise. In other words, US dollar has strengthened by 14 paise. Now, if you move on to the commodities, when I'm talking about commodities, I'm going to speak about the bullion, which is gold and silver. We are going to talk about gold prices in India and the international prices. We will also be talking about crude, WTI, that is Western Texas Intermediate, and crude Brent, which is the most commonly used crude for refining all over the world. And then we will move on to the cryptos, that is the Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then, of course, we will be discussing about yield of 10-year paper in India and the USA. And of course, MSCI, that is the Morgan Stanley Capital International Index for India and for the emerging market. So when we talk about all these markets, we will find that in India, gold and silver have gained substantially. Gold closed at 95,130 for 10 grams, which is 2.97% as compared to the previous week. Silver closed at 97,000, logging a gain of 1.02% as compared to the previous week. Now, the gold prices internationally, which is per troy ounce, closed at $3,205.30, which is 3.72% less than what it was during the previous week. Crude, both WTI as well as Brent, showed substantial gain of 2.341% and 2.35%, which is reasonably good. Bitcoin has just shown a marginal increase of 0.43%, closed at $1,03,539. Ethereum, of course, zoomed up by 6.84% to 2,496.48. Coming to the yield of government papers. Now we are going to talk about 10-year treasury bills or 10-year government papers. These are representative instruments, and the coupon and the yield, these two are very, very important because that actually tells you what should be that sets the benchmark for the borrowing rates in the market. So when we talk about yield, of Indian papers, that is Indian government securities, we are talking about 7.10% government securities maturing on 2034. The yield was 6.2755%, almost 11 basis points lower than what it was during the previous week. This is good news for the government of India because your borrowing cost goes down. In the case of USA, the yield was 4.4370. That is also for a 10-year security paper. It has increased by 6 BPS, that is 6 basis points. For your information, 1 basis point is 100 of 1%. Now, talking about MSCI India, MSCI stands for Morgan Stanley Capital International Index. Now, this index is actually on USD, based on USD valuation of Indian equities. It was 5,199.80, logging a increase of 4.88%. I think this absolutely goes in well in sync with whatever is here. And MSCI emerging market has increased by 2.98% to close at 1,172.38. So on the whole, if you see, the Indian market has performed pretty well. The US market has also performed pretty well. Gold has also gone up in terms of commodities. Crude has slightly moved up as well. So by and large, last week was reasonably good in spite of all the geopolitical tensions, in spite of the continuance of Russian Ukraine war, in spite of PAC and India conflicts, in spite of Trump's tariff tantrums. So with this, we close this week's roundup. Thank you very much for being with me. See you next week with another episode of Think and Link series. Thank you so much.